his woman, hey, take care of this. And then next thing you know, she wants to give him some mouth. Well, her kids are going to do the same thing because they're always listening and watching too. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. So that's why I say some men, that's what they expect when they're going to take you in his home or take you in his apartment,
Gotcha.
which according to her is what he did. So I mean, I'm on the whole. I didn't ask for too much detail. I just asked for the current situation. I asked for some deep things that mattered to her about him, and she said that was one of them. So I'm like, all right, I'm listening. I'm reading the messages, reading the email, and I'm like, all right. I'm hearing her out, and it sounds as though some women who have kids, and then you want a man to treat them a certain way, but it's like you don't want a man to discipline them at all. Like even from taking their phone to cut off the TV and do your homework, it's like okay. But when you don't want a man to discipline your kid, and I mean, I'm not even saying put your hands on. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's a lot of ways you can discipline a child without touching them. But when you don't even want your man or fellas, you don't want no woman to discipline your child. You gotta understand that's going to draw a lot of lack of respect when you're not around. A lot of
Yeah.
times will. And it's like when you don't, if the step parent is not being able to show your kid who's in charge, just imagine when you're not around what your kid does outside the house. I know there's still a lot of good kids out there, man, but it's like when kids are around negativity, like they are at school, they see other kids disrespecting adults, then they come home and they ain't got to do what the stepmom or dad says. Is to me, I feel that step parent does have a right to discipline a kid because again, parents are preparing kids to better themselves and preparing them for the outside world. But when you can't discipline a kid in your own home, kids start to develop a thought process and then a habit process that nobody can tell them what to do.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I mean, you hear about all these kids all the time, and something
Mm-hmm.
happens, something goes down, and the first thing the parents do is, "Oh, that can't be my child. My child would never do that." But the reality
Mm-hmm.
is, they're either they're either lying to themselves
Yep.
or they're really clueless to what their child is doing when they leave the house. They must be putting on a good act. But the reality is most people are not like that. The reality is most of these kids behave the same way at home as they do when they leave the house. And sometimes they get a little worse when they leave the house,
There you
when
go.
they get around their friends and peer pressure. But those things as a parent, you have to continue to stay on top of those things. But
There you
like you said, these blended families and in these situations, a lot of communication definitely has to take place, especially if it doesn't even matter if it's one on one, but there's some situations I've seen where it's like each one has like three to four. They're bringing them both in. That's six to eight children. That's or 6 to 8 young people.
Brady Bunch.
That's a Brady Bunch and a lot of moving pieces. So you definitely have to get on the same page when it comes to discipline, when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to chores, when it comes to responsibilities, when it comes to how everyone talks to each other and how to communicate, school, all these different things. And so you really have to. It's not an easy task. I give credit and major props to everyone that has been involved in like super blended families that way. Because it's definitely not an easy thing to do.
It's not.
No,
And before and while we're still on this subject, though, one thing I also wanted to say was while I was messaging her and talking to her, I also was going on social media to take a few peeks around, and it's like, man, here comes the law of attraction because the perfect ad or the perfect post popped up right as I was messaging her and emailing her because we do both. I went and gave her my email just because hey, I'm always in one spot or the other. So we were doing both, and then I just so happened to run across this post, and it was about this almost the same thing that her and I were talking about. But according to the post, there was this dad that had a son had a child of his own, and then the mom also had a child of her own, and they lived together. They're married, all that good stuff. But the father's child graduated, and the mother's child graduated. The mother's child is not the father's, but
okay.
the son is the child they have is theirs. So,
Mm.
anyways, according to the ad, the father gets his child something for graduation, or takes the child somewhere for graduation, but does not take the mother's child for the same graduation. And I was like, man, ain't this some mess, man? I was like, I'm sitting here talking, emailing this woman right now, messaging this woman right now, and it's similar to what she's going through. Not quite. And I was like, well, is the father obligated, to take the child that's not his? I mean, but the post didn't say anything about, well, the father couldn't discipline the child that wasn't his. The post didn't say anything about that. But to me, I feel as though, yeah, if the father's like, well, if the mother's like, well, you can't discipline my child, then the father should have the right to, hey, well, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna spoil your child. I'm not gonna treat your child to certain things then, because you're taking your when parents do that, even if a father does that, and a wife is like, well, you can't discipline my child, but you can give them things. Like that's saying, that's drawing a line of lack of respect right there. And the child's going to catch on sooner or later to, hey, I can do bad, but you can't do nothing to me. And it's going to catch on to
Right.
the child sooner or later. So I feel that parents, if you are doing that, Sam, I'm pretty sure you can relate. Even though your boy's about grown now, it's like, you lay the ground rules on right away, and then the spouse that may or may not have the spouse that may not have any kids or may have a kid with their husband or wife. It's all about, again, that's not communication. It's respect. When both of y'all respect each other's, ways of how you're going to raise this family, regardless of whose child is who's a step parent or not. When you have that respect for each other, trust and believe. If the younger the kids are, then the more they're going to catch on to respect. But you got to be able to draw that line and correct them when the child is not the stepdad or the stepmom, but you're their mom or dad. You got to step up and correct them, even sometimes if you may disagree with what the step parent is doing. It's like, hey, you may like, I know couples, man, the mom would tell the dad, hey, take out the trash, and then the dad will go ahead and tell the stepchild to take out the trash. And it's times like that. It's times like that where the child is only the mother's, though. This is, they ain't got no children together. This is where the child is only the mother's. Now the child doesn't hear the mom tell or ask the dad to take out the trash. But when the dad does it, sometimes, especially when you say that his place, sometimes he's doing it just to see, hey, is this child going to respect me? Is this child going to give me in the mouth? He's doing it for a reason, or something, and vice versa. Even when the mom does it, very rarely is the mom taking out the trash. Everybody lives different, but if the dad's telling the mom to take out the trash, and that's the dad's son, that's not her son, and the mom's like, all right, well, I'm gonna tell your son or your daughter to take out the trash. Sometimes, fellas, the mom is trying to get respect, or keep the line of respect there. It ain't because she's just lazy all the time. And I say all the time for a reason. But again, everybody's different. Just had to throw that in there.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. There's a lot of people in blended families that make it work and are successful, and they could probably share their own stories of how they've, I'm not in that specific situation, but I'm sure there are a lot. And I have some of my own extended family.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a not an easy task, and everyone can't do it, but I think for those who can do it and do make it successful, I think it's a very rewarding situation. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. It is. And investment in a child, discipline in a child, again, it does not always mean you have to, put your hands on them. But discipline is definitely huge, because that's what they got. That's what they have to have, when they're in school to do their homework. They got to have that when they get to college to do their papers and all that stuff. They have to have discipline when they go out here and live life. I don't care if they have to catch a bus or drive a car. They got to be, and they got to have discipline to work. Discipline is definitely something that's a must in life, period. But it all starts at home, and then you got all these underpaid teachers around here, all the damn underpaid staff, and when you don't allow a step parent to discipline a child that may or may not be his or hers, then they go to, and it's like, okay, well, why is the lack of respect going towards these teachers that are being underpaid already? And there's, again, one thing leads to another. But again, me personally, if you don't want me to discipline your child, if what happened to meet a woman, she don't want me to discipline her child, they'll ask me to buy certain things or do certain things for your child. Then, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not. And there are some men who are like that also. They just don't tell you until after the fact. But trust me, they go hand in hand.
No, that's definitely true. Especially when it comes getting back to the whole discipline thing. We could talk about this forever. Just because there's so much to unwind. But yeah, definitely when you definitely when it comes to like discipline and things like that, I think that's really key, especially when you're talking about raising. I mean, it could be young kids, it could be older kids or whatever. It doesn't matter, or older teens. Um, there still has to be a level of discipline and communication, especially um, especially when it comes to discipline and how you approach it. How does the other person approach it? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? What are we sharing? What are we not sharing? How do you handle your and some things you're not going to know everything. I guess that's the key thing, right? You're not going to know everything. There are going to be some mistakes that are made, but I think the more you can talk about and discuss early on, I think the better.
There you go. There you go. And again, a lot of times, again, it goes back to respect again, because a lot of times when you discipline, it don't have to be a child. Sometimes it can be a grown ass man, grown ass woman. When you discipline, it draws a line of respect. And then at the same time, I'm always saying respect is a key factor to any relationship. And I mean, kids especially, they have to learn. As long as they still living under the roof, then they you got to teach them and pour it into them as much as you can. I'm back on LaGrange, man. If your neighbor saw your ass doing something wrong, they could grab a switch off a tree and probably get to your tail and then tell your parents what the heck you just did. And your parents would probably grab a paddle or a switch and get to your tail too. I mean, that was the old days, though, man. I like that anymore. But I mean, back
Oh yeah, you definitely wouldn't see a neighbor disciplining somebody else's children these days. You definitely wouldn't see that.
No, but see, back then in them days, the way my grandmother told me was like, Bruce, that's indirect love, and they're not going to tell you they love you, but they're trying to tell you that they don't want you to be those guys that went to jail or drug bust or got on the street corners selling drugs. They don't want you to be one of those people, and they're trying to tell you that, but they're not going to say it in so many words. And I could after I didn't experience it myself, but after I saw maybe the third or fourth time done to some of my friends, I was like, okay, that's what the heck grandma was talking about. Okay, well. So yeah, man, it's but yeah, some of y'all men and women out here who are like, you don't want your man, your woman to touch your child. You might want to reconsider, especially if you ask to move in with him or her. Especially if you're, especially when ladies, when you have boys, it's good for a man who's been a boy before to lead by the example. And show the boy and show your boy, whether if he's not 18 yet, even if he's still 18 or above, to show your son how to be a man, what it takes, what he should and should not do. I mean, there's just certain things that men will take seriously, a lot more serious from another man than he or she will from a female. I'm not saying you can't on the ABC 1, 2, 3s, but trust me, like how a man walks, the fair, I mean, anything from a fair, firm handshake to, if you say you're going to do something, then do it. Don't, you may not be lying, but you can't be playing around with the truth like that. I mean, there's just certain things coming from a man to a boy or to a child who's, there's just certain things that's going to sink in. But if you don't want your husband or your stepdad to play his role, and something happened to your son, don't blame him. Don't blame stepdad. I know that.
There you go. Well, let's jump to this next topic. We only got about 15 minutes left. Let's jump right in. We'll try to hit these about 5 minutes on each of these, maybe. So somebody reached out to us and they talked about they wanted to know our thoughts on bad hygiene in a relationship, like especially like when you're first dating, and if somebody has bad hygiene, the right way to kind of bring that up in a non-disrespectful way. They didn't go into specifics of, what hygiene they were referencing in general. Because, the first thing most people talk about is like breath or, maybe somebody was, didn't put the right amount of deodorant on, etc. or whatever. But what's your thoughts on that? If you were dating and let's say you're on a date with a young lady and all you smell was BO, BO, BO.
Man, that to me is that's a funny one, man. I mean, to me, it's just like that. When there's bad hygiene in a woman, man, to me, that is lack of love she has for herself. Lack of
interesting. I haven't heard it put that way. Interesting.
Yeah, it's lack of self-care. It's lack of love. It's like no self-awareness. You know what I mean? And when you have bad hygiene like that, it's to the point where, you know, you asking, she's asking again, going back to respect. She's asking for respect in so many ways, like take me here, take me there, give me this, give me that. But when I see that on the woman, man, it's I don't care if it's the way I've been to her apartment and she happens to live like that, even but if she happens to smell like that or be like that, dress like that. To me, that's a sign of bad. It's like low self-esteem. It's negative, too much negative energy on self. It's lack of respect of self. It's a lot of things, man. And then you can't be sitting here letting me see or smell you like that, because eventually I'm gonna start hearing you and you talk like that too. And it's like, all right, your hygiene is that bad, man. I'm like, okay, what you even? Why are you even with me then? If you're gonna carry yourself like this, and they're like, well, I've had one woman who was like that, and I'm like, huh, I don't know what the hell you were thinking, but that's not like, okay. And this is way back when, because I'm gonna take I'm gonna go ahead and mess around, and take your ass from daggum TGI Fridays that was open back then. I'm gonna take your ass from there, probably to some daggum, Bojangles or some mess, man. Some daggum, not McDonald's, man. But I'm about to downgrade a little bit, man, because what the heck you thinking? And then I was like, man, I said, you know what? And this was again back in the college days, and I was just like, all right, whatever, because I'm trying to get away from school. I'm trying to enjoy my life, and so I was just dating. And I'll take this but again, like I said before, I will take a woman based on what her appearance is. And because she has some bad hygiene, man, I'm like, you know what, bump it. I'm gonna go ahead and change this from TGI Friday to somewhere else, man. We ain't going there. Go there next time you look like you want to go there. Shit.
I mean, it's it's interesting. I mean, if I was if I was in that situation, you don't. I mean, you try not to be disrespectful, like you said, but I do agree with you. Like I agree with you on one side, meaning I do think it is a mix of, lack of care and awareness. But then on the same side, I guess it depends on the age, right? So maybe if you were younger, people, I guess somebody could say, oh, well, maybe this person wasn't as aware, or maybe they just didn't know. Like if you're early on, like early teens or whatever. But I think when you are over the age of 18, 21, let's say, mid 20s, 30s, 40s, like there's really no excuse for it unless you were rushing around and you were doing this, doing that. But even then, I mean, carry some wipes and deodorant in your car, I get it if somebody just finished playing basketball and they are doing this, but then that means, guess what? You need to plan your day a little bit better. If you have a date or you're going to meet this person and you just worked out at the gym and you did this and you've been running around all day and you haven't had the time to take another shower or take a shower or whatever. Hey, guess what? You need to say, look, I need to go do X, Y, Z. And that goes back to communication, right?
Yep.
But I think at our age is very, for those people that are single out there, when you're in a relationship, it's a little easier to talk to somebody about that. But when you're dating, it's a little harder. But I think the only way to make it better is to, I don't know, you maybe make a joke out of it if you're in that situation, or, you say, oh, you just come from the gym, or, or maybe you not say it to them. Maybe you lean back like you're stretching, doing something else, and you kind of sniff somebody, or you wait for somebody to walk by and you're like, oh man, they smell funky.
Try to play it off. I mean,
you try to play it off so that you make them aware that you are aware of what's going on or whatever. But that person could have a different, I don't know. Some people have different what's the right word? Different, not an illness, but like conditions where maybe they do smell a certain way. I mean, I've heard of things like that. I haven't experienced that myself, but people have things like that. So sometimes I'm assuming maybe that person would talk to you about it early on, so you're not caught off guard or whatever. But crazy things happen,
And that's why I just want to say this. I'm not gonna put the person's name out there, but again, this is dating in college. So I found out later that the young lady did have a mental health issue. I didn't, even though I still had a few challenges I was dealing with, again, still battling a little spiritual warfare myself. That's not quite a mental illness, but I was still, going through my own phase of stuff like that. I didn't, completely judge her. What I did, I made sure it was just one date. I made sure I learned a few things from her before I, ended the date. And then I took her back home. And then one thing else I did to give her, this is what I did to give her a clue. I mean, because it was almost the same kind of way. It was spring getting ready to become summer. And this is, I gave her a clue. I didn't turn on the damn AC. I rolled all four damn windows down. That's clue enough. And see, ladies and gents, when a man or woman is trying to give you clues, man, but you ain't catching on to them because you just so excited about the date or whatever, that's when a lot of stuff, there's a lot of flags that are dropped on the play right there, and some of y'all got to pick them up. Some of y'all got to realize you're dropping the flag on the play, and some of y'all got to realize you're not picking up the clue. I mean, it wasn't cold outside or anything. It wasn't hot outside. It was, it was, I think, it was it was 82, 80 something. I can't remember exactly. But the reason why I can remember the weather is because it was so similar to what we had, a couple of weeks ago. Right. I just rolled all the windows down. I gave clues as far as trying to, sniff someone walking by. I don't think I did all that mess, man. But it was to the point where, like, damn, man, is it her damn time of the month or some shit, man, or what? And it's like, did she even check? But I found out later on she didn't,
I mean, that shouldn't cause that. If that's causing that, then you have some other issues going on.
I know. I was like, man, I didn't know what was wrong with her. It was just, that was the one time that was the only date we had. And shoot, it's like if you run across people who have, but that's why I want to say mental health issues can sometimes play a bigger factor than we think they can. But at the same time, I mean, I wasn't desperate for those of y'all who'd be sitting here wondering, you want your man to smell this fresh, you want your woman to smell that fresh. I mean, I'll go on a date just like this. I mean, I'll go on the Air Force One, some black sweatpants, and the shirt y'all see, and I'll go out on a date like this. I mean, I won't plan to wear this on a date, but I mean, I don't try to dress to impress. I'll be myself, man. Because when you're yourself, I mean, the other person's true colors are going to show. Now, if we go into a wedding or something, man, like that, if we going out to a grown club to, watch a fight, that's different. I mean, I'm not going to, because some bars only allow you to wear certain clothes when you're going to come here even to watch a fight or anything like that. So it's different. But at the same time, I don't like to dress. I'm done dressing to impress, man. Them days are behind me. I wear some days. Like I said, I wear a pair of shoes, jeans, and a t-shirt these days.
There you go. I hear you. Well, with this last 5 minutes, let's touch on. We might not be able to hit the last one, but we'll hit this one. And we'll probably have to talk about this next week as well, next show. But somebody asked us and said, is there such a thing as saying "I love you" too soon? I told them, that's a lot to unpack, and so we're probably going to have to keep that one going next week. These last two topics or whatever, but. Saying "I love you" too soon. I'll try to cover it in 2 minutes and then give you 2 minutes. I mean, or I'll go 1 minute and then you go 1 minute and then we'll go back and forth. I'll just look at the clock. And so, I mean, the reality is saying "I love you" too soon. I can see it both ways, right? We all know people, we're not going to mention any names, that they fall really hard very quickly. And if you've met somebody else that has that similar instinct or nature, then maybe it's not an issue saying it too soon. But I think a lot of times people get caught up in the fantasy of the moment or the fantasy of the relationship. Like they say, that honeymoon phase of dating, or maybe you're outside of dating. Maybe you're committed now and you haven't said it while you're dating. Or maybe you're long-term dating, right? Let's say it's been 6 months or whatever, or 3 months, and you want to say it, and you say it, and then guess what happens? The other person, let's say they say, they don't respond with anything. Then what do you do? Yeah. Do you tuck your head and run away, or do you like, oh man, I said this too early? But I think you really have to, even if you feel it, I think that you have to throw some hints out there, like you always say, hints out there to gauge your other person's perspective and see how they truly feel without them actually saying it to you. And I think the average person, most of the time, you can pick up and see how a person really truly feels about it. They really like you versus them maybe still having up some walls. But what do you think?
Man, the way I feel about this is I'm gonna try and be as fair about this as possible. One thing is, ladies and gents, you never want to ask the man or woman you're with, do they love you? You want to let them.
Don't ask it.
You want to let them show you and tell you on his or her own. You don't want to ask, because when you ask and you don't get the response you want, a lot of y'all be freaking the hell out like crazy, like the world getting ready to come to an end or something. And then also, I mean, there's been times when I've dated women for a period of time. This is, way back in my upper 20s. I'll date a woman for a period of time, and we're not quite committed just yet. But then she has to hear "I love you" before she commits to me. I don't know if you, and one time, man, is I'm gonna just put it out there. A lot of y'all be asking, do you love me while you sleeping with that man or woman? And
Oof.
that
Ooh.
and is not the right time. Again, to me, love is not something. Some people have to hear it. If you're one of those who has to hear it, then you got to give it time to develop. Everybody's on a different. Again, there's no rule on when you're supposed to say it, how you're supposed to say it, but everybody's at a different time. I would say let the problem, because one time a woman asked me that, and I was just honest with her. I was like, not yet. She asked me. I think we about 6 to 8 months in. Again, I was in my late 20s, and but I mean, she's looking, for commitment. She's looking for that marriage. She's wanting that kind of stuff. But the thing of it was, what I was picking up on was that she was not. She was just getting over her ex.
Okay.
She was just trying to let go of the ex, and that's what I was paying attention to. And my thing is, I ain't gonna sit here and tell you. I'm not gonna tell her what she wants to hear and then break her heart if we don't work out or whatever. I'm not a man who cheats. So I mean, I value the woman I'm always with, but I wasn't gonna try to get her hopes so high up to the point where we didn't work out and then she felt she was heartbroken again. But I was just honest with her. I said, not yet. I wanted to, but she was on full speed, man. So I was just honest with her. And I mean, sometimes that's the best answer to give is not yet, if you're not sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Or you could say, I mean, there's also those situations where, let's say the female said to you or whoever, or not you per se, but let's say the person, or the guy or the female or whoever, and maybe your response isn't, I don't personally think you should lie just to make the other person feel better. Mm-hmm. But maybe you say, hey, you know what? I really, really like you. I enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy what we have and what we're building and things like that. I'm not quite at the level to say, I'm not ready to say, I love you per se, but then you could, you just say how you do feel about them and maybe the things how they do make you feel, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And maybe I think that smooths things over a little bit versus just pausing and looking like a deer in headlights and or not saying anything, that can help. That can help things a little bit as well. But
like I said, you want to let that person start to show you clues, start to give you hints that they love you. I don't care if it's lays, flower, hug, or they come do stuff for you that you don't expect. They give you a gift, big gift that means a lot to you. It's like you gotta buy into this. If you're gonna ask, fellas, if you're gonna ask your woman or your ladies, you're gonna ask your man, you have to wait for the signs. You can't just throw it out there and then be upset with their answer. Because then your energy, if they say that they do love you, that you don't love them the same way, you can't match you, and you try to match their energy, but yours is fake as hell, they gonna catch you.
No, I mean that's so true. I mean, I think the best way to handle it is just be straight up with that person, and not lead them on with the response. But I mean, it's always a tricky situation. I think you have to gauge how the other person is. Like you say, the actions speak louder than the words. People say all types of things, but what are their actions truly showing you? That's what it truly boils down to.
I tell people all the time, sometimes your actions speak so loud I can't hear a damn word you say.
So true. But hey, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in this week. We'll probably put out another little short clip, maybe covering some other topics later this week. But hey, remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment on @ChaosConversation on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok, all of the above. But yeah, more importantly, hey, if you like the videos, if you like the content, you have a question, share it with someone, maybe a family or a friend, or recommend it to someone else. And we'd love to have more listeners and more followers. So we do thank you guys for tuning in to an early edition of Chaos Conversation, a little hour earlier than we usually do. But yeah, hey, tune in, check out the replay for you guys that are coming in late, and we'll share that video as well. And until next week, we thank you guys for tuning in. Stay hydrated, like Bruce was talking about earlier. We're about to have a major heat wave across the country, at least for one day or a couple of days. So stay hydrated if you work outside, if you're going outside to play, the beach or whatever. Don't just drink alcohol. Drink some water or some other type of something that keeps you hydrated. But until then, hey, we'll see you guys next week. All right, peace out.